Good day, and thank you for joining us, everyone. This is Paul Rocchio with the International Franchise Association. I want to thank you for joining us for today's presentation. Today's presentation is part of IFA's 2021 Economic Outlook webinar series. It's based around the newly released 2021 Economic Outlook on Franchising report. And we'll focus today on the commercial and residential services sector. Two quick notes before we get started. We are recording today's webinar, and it will be made available later this evening on community.franchise.org. And if you have any questions for the speakers today, please use the question box, and we will address them towards the end of today's webinar. But before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsor for today's webinar, NetCertive, and I'd like to also introduce Jason Lynch. He's the Director of Demand Generation. And Jason, please say a few words. And again, thank you so much for sponsoring today's webinar. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Paul. Really excited for this panel. I know there's some definite legends that are going to be sharing their experience over the last year and what they're expecting for 2021. So I'm on the marketing team at NetCertive, and we run local digital advertising programs for franchises. We work with a lot of franchise networks, managing their ads across search, display, social, video, connected TV. And what we've learned this last year is that commercial and home services brands are busy, but digital advertising can definitely be a differentiator for a franchisee to make sure that they're working on their most profitable customer segments and services. So if you take this idea of an economic outlook on a micro level and even your own network profitability, there are three things that we do at NetCertive that we'd love for you all to know that really make an impact for our clients and ensure that they're building profitable businesses. So the first is that we're all about corporate and local harmony. Our campaigns start with brand compliance and brand equity goals, while also localizing campaign strategy and creative to match each location's needs. Second is national and local insights. Everything is data-driven these days, right? And we run your campaigns on our platform that shows ROI by location and digital channel. So you can log in and see performance and even listen to inbound calls. And that all works together to improve performance, which is really our third item, is that you can expect more profitable leads and customers because our technology pulls in all the ad channels that we use and focuses spend on what delivers an ROI. So if anyone out there would like to connect to learn how we connect corporate and local teams and help them reach their target markets, please reach out or visit netcertive.com/IFA to learn more. We'd love to help you grow with your most profitable customer base in 2021. So I know that your ideal customers are out there searching for your services and ready to be nurtured across channels. So thanks again for tuning in today, and we're excited to get into this panel. Thanks, Paul.
Awesome. Jason, thank you so much. And again, thanks to NetCertive. So today's purpose is to give you an overview of the report findings, specifically for the commercial and residential services sector. And then you'll hear from your peers within the sector on their experiences over the past year, what adjustments they had to make to stay operating, and where they see the franchising economy going. For a high-level overview of the full report, you can view the recording from last week's kickoff webinar at community.franchise.org. But here, let me just give you a few of the key points from the Frandata's findings. So Frandata predicts that, and this is awesome, that by year end, franchising will have recovered nearly to 2019 levels in most metrics: business growth, employment, economic outlook, and contribution to the GDP. So that to me is just phenomenal. And also, franchising is expected to experience the highest upswing of franchise sales since the last recession. Again, that is amazing news, and especially in the commercial and residential services sector as well. So franchise establishments in the sector are expected to grow at a rate of 3.4% in 2021. That's roughly about 76,000 units. And we're talking about 48,000 jobs could be added in this specific sector, making almost 302,000 franchise workers in the sector alone. These are great predictions for the sector and a lot to work towards. So on that note, I'd like to introduce our awesome panel, the commercial and residential services sector professionals who have kindly joined us today to talk a little bit more about their perspectives on the franchise economy as a whole and within the sector as well. So today we have Mike Pierce, Authority Brands, Mary Thompson, Neighborly, Steve White, Pure Clean, and Tom Wood from Floor Coverings International. So an awesome panel today. And on that note, I'd like to turn things over to you, Tom. Tom, please take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paul. And boy, what a great introduction. We have a panel here of industry professionals that are knee deep in certainly everything residential and commercial services across North America. And when we were prepping for this call last week, it was interesting. We were looking at the data. We were talking a little bit about how our industries were impacted. And one of the things that we discussed was, a year ago right now, all of us were in the throes of the pandemic had just come. And when it comes to leading a business, when you look in the mirror and you say, am I equipped for this? Do I know what's coming next? How do I lead my organization? And I think universally, many of us shared, boy, we had never been through something like this and really weren't sure how we lead. But shortly afterwards, after the pandemic started, many of our businesses started to perform very differently than what was being reported in the news. So while the news was saying the economy was shut down, our businesses in the home improvement and residential and commercial sectors, were performing quite well. So the question that I want to start with, and Mary, if you don't mind, I'm going to go to you first, and Steve, maybe I'll come to you second. Mary, a year ago now, we got into the pandemic. The news is saying everything is terrible. How was your business performing, say, once you got into April and May? And when was it that you first knew that your business wasn't following the trends that we were reading about and watching on the news?
Well, the place we started was the states were starting to close down. And just getting the information out to our franchise owners on which states had closed down and what the governor had said and what they needed to do, our absolute focus for all of March and probably a good portion of April, we were heads down so much in trying to make sure that they were informed and who was an essential business versus who wasn't. And we have 17 brands in North America. So like you have a Molly Maid where housekeeping and cleaning was not necessarily, and Mike, you experienced the same, was not necessarily an essential business. And then you had plumbing on the far end of that spectrum that was absolutely an essential business. So I would say it wasn't until the end of April, beginning of May, when we started realizing that even with states closed, we had so many of our businesses that were essential and that were out doing the work. And we were having our franchise owners say, we're busy. We have a lot of jobs. They were telling us that, and we were seeing that in the leads. We also tracked the leads coming in digitally, and you could see in March and April, you could just see a big dive on the leads. And then all of a sudden in May, they started inching up. So that's when we saw it.
So Mary, a quick follow-up question. So when you look back, was there a key metric or a key performance indicator that one day or 1 week you looked at it and said, okay, we really are performing well?
There were two. One was seeing the leads because, and no pun intended, it was a nice lead indicator to tell us that, okay, those leads really are coming in. And then secondly, when we started seeing as we were reviewing, I look at same-store sales, and I'm maniacally focused on same-store sales. And when we started seeing in May that some of our brands, the same-store sales which we were thinking were going to be way off. Not only were they not way off, they were actually above the prior year. So that's when I started seeing that.
Fantastic. Steve, let's come over to you, and then Mike, I'm going to come over to you next. Can you tell us a little bit about what your experience was like last year? So again, same question as Mary just handled. We're in this throes of everything is shutting down governmentally, but yet there was a day that we realized our businesses were actually performing well. What was it like for you over at PureClean?
It was very interesting for us. Well, there's an old saying about when preparation meets opportunity or something. PureClean's really focused on local market work, right? But we've been trying to improve our storm response for the last several years. And so when COVID hit, what we did was we just treated it like a storm came to every zip code in America. So we triggered our national call system, which we really worked to refine over the last few years. And we started holding daily national calls with our franchisees and getting, as a result of that, we were getting feedback from them right away. And so we went ultimately from daily to, multiple times a week down to weekly until we really didn't feel like we needed them anymore a few months later. But we got feedback pretty quickly from our franchisees. And then one of our other indicators is, so we have national accounts with some of the biggest property insurers in America. And I get to see weekly reports on job assignments from those big insurance carriers. And we expected them to dip, and they didn't dip. They dipped maybe a little bit at first when there was real hesitancy to let us come into people's homes. But if you've got a sewer backed up, or if you got a kitchen fire or something, it's got to be addressed. So ultimately they would have to figure out a way to get comfortable to let us in. So we saw a few weeks maybe of lag, maybe a month, but we saw the franchisees rebound pretty quickly.
So, Steve, a follow-up question for you as well. When you look back to that time frame, what was your key performance indicator, and roughly what time frame was it that you knew, no, we're actually doing really well?
So the earliest key performance indicator were those weekly reports that come from the big insurance companies of assignments. So I could have seen that the assignment volume was not dropping off because life was still happening to people, right? The joke in our business was because people are working from home, they're catching water leaks way earlier, so they're way less severe when we get them. On the other hand, we got a lot more kitchen fires than we've had in a long time. So wasn't completely true. It was a fun joke, but the core business never really abated. And so that earliest indicator was what we saw from the big insurance companies and their reports. And then, from a franchise development perspective, that changed right away too, because a lot of brands they were having to furlough franchise development teams and stuff.
Yeah.
And we never did. We immediately went to video, and our franchise development just took off. I would say that was April when our franchise development took off.
Fantastic. And I am going to tell you, Steve, my company in the flooring industry, we rely on those water leaks and people like you to come and have us repair those floors. So if you can get back out there and create a few more of those, it'd be helpful. All right, Mike, certainly in your business, which is a residential service, it's a much more intimate interaction with the consumers, right, than maybe my business or Steve's business and some of Mary's businesses as well. What was it like in your world last year with, having to come into people's homes? And when was it that business started to really come back and you realized, okay, we're going to be okay?
It was a real mix between the different brands, and Mary spoke about the challenge with the residential cleaning service, and that was our brand that had the biggest challenge. It was not deemed an essential service, and we had to go to bat to get some of our brands deemed essential services, like pool cleaning. And we made the argument that if a pool is not properly cleaned, it can become a source of disease as well. So the initial impact was really centered. What I saw was centered around employees worried about coming to work and could we get them to come out, and especially in the senior care industry. But once we overcame that issue of having established the principles of how to do your work safely and how to be around people safely, especially in the senior care industry, we started April and May and June were record months for us, so it was very early on. But the initial challenge of getting people comfortable to coming to work, the big challenge we had was the residential cleaning service, and turns out people don't necessarily want you to clean their home while they're in the home, and so that was the challenge. But we had an immediate lift because of the time of the year in our outdoor services, our pool, our mosquito spraying. People want to use their homes, and it was immediate. I mean, immediate. More people were opening their pools early in April, May. Mosquitoes use the outdoor services, and then our trade business, like Mary's business with the plumbing, the HVAC, and the electrical, nobody's not going to call if they have a need along those lines. So it really, the only glitch for us was the initial pop-in concern with employees not wanting to come to work, and seniors not necessarily thinking it's safe to have anybody around. But once we established those principles of how to work safely, it was just turned out to be a great year. So.
Fantastic.
Right. Something that Mike mentioned about the outdoor brands, one of the things that happened with all the children going home and doing school from home, the backyard became the place for recess. And so homeowners they needed some place that they felt like they had an oasis, and the backyards became that place. And I think that's why both of us saw that in our outdoor brands.
Oh, definitely. And Mary, I'm going to come to you with the next question too. So thanks for teeing me up on that one. I know many of us, when we look back to, again, kind of that June and July timeframe, when I'll call it North America and the world was really in flux. There was a lot of things politically going on. There was a lot of things economically going on. There was a lot of things going on with the virus. But quietly, our businesses were performing really, really well. And I know many of us felt like we needed to step on the gas, but at the same time, we really kept our celebrations on the down low, right? Because it didn't seem like it was acceptable to be celebrating that anybody was performing well. But what I want to ask, what did you do behind the scenes when you realized that your company was performing well, customers needed us and wanted us, and Mary, things like you were just saying, the backyard became the oasis, consumers were investing in their homes, we call it, there was white trucks up and down every street. How did you take advantage, Mary, of that situation? What changes did you make, if any, or what types of things did you accelerate? And Steve, I'll come to you next.
Well, there were three things that we wanted to make sure we did in what we call seizing the moment. The first one was, and I think, Mike, you touched on it, was getting past the fear. There was fear on all levels. The home, I mean, when you're in someone's home, when you're in their bathroom, that's as personal as it gets. And so being able to have processes in place to show them, this is everything we touched. This is what we did. This is what we disinfected and how we disinfected it. So, and for the associates that belong to our franchise owners, also teaching them processes so that they could be less fearful, because they were also very afraid. So that was the first thing. The second thing that we did was we wanted to look for where are we held up? Where is it that we can, we started conducting seize the moment meetings where we would bring brands together that we thought had a good combination, like for us, Mosquito Joe and Grounds Guys. So like most people don't know that if you want to keep mosquitoes at bay, you better keep your grass short. So we started working to bring those brands, not every single brand, but these two brands, or Molly Maid and Window Genie together, because people that were doing the same things. And ironically, we should have been doing that long before the pandemic, but it was one of those things to think outside the box. And then the third thing that we really focused on was making sure that that any training or process we had, was it the right training and process? So like, if you always hold this kind of meeting, but now we can't hold this meeting in person. In the beginning, we just tried to make the meeting what it always was, but it doesn't work that way virtually. It's something different. So we had to really break apart our training and put it in bite-sized chunks for them so that we could move them faster. Because
Yes.
when you're teaching somebody, this is what disinfecting looks like versus sanitizing and what you need to do about it, you need it to go across very quickly. So those were the three things that we did.
So here's a follow-up question for you. In normal times, a lot of us that are process improvement oriented will take our time with those processes. We will come up with something, we'll test it, we'll modify it, and there's a lot of steps before implementation. Was there any changes in your processes of how you rolled those things out and went to video training and such? You just rolled a lot of things by us. What was your rate of change?
It was the fastest I've seen. I've been part of this company going on 15 years now, and it was the fastest rate of change. And there were a number of reasons. One, I think it was President Kennedy that said that the Chinese characters for crisis are danger and opportunity. That there's two characters, and you have to find the opportunity in the danger. And so it was when I say a great moment, I know it's been a very hard year for everybody. It was a great moment for us to look for the opportunity, and everyone was motivated to move faster. And it's the longest days I've ever spent. I mean, there were days I'm at a stand-up desk now, and the reason I am is because there were days I sat for so long I went to get up and I couldn't stand up well. And so, because it was 12 hours sitting at a desk just trying to talk to somebody or work through something. I think when you have a crisis, you should always start with, where is our opportunity? And you shouldn't feel guilty about it. You should look for where is that opportunity.
Your team really did that and embodied that for sure. That's why I wanted to throw that question to you. Thank you. Steve, tell us what it was like at PuroClean. You realized you were performing well. You understood that it wasn't a short-term thing. How did you and your team really take advantage of that and accelerate things?
So one of the things I do every time there's a crisis is go back to basics, shore up the foundation. So America was learning what PPE is. We work in PPE from the day we come into this business, and for us, it was about scouring the warehouses around the country to find all the available PPE. We even found one supplier that had been reluctant to use up some PPE because it had an old version of our logo on it. Yeah, haul that thing out. It's coming out. It all got used really, really, really quickly. So we are really shoring up basics, fundamentals, things like Mary's talking about. We have a really, really good online learning academy for our franchisees. All of a sudden, it was being used in new ways. You got temporary workers really concerned about the environment that they're working in, and they've never put on PPE before. So now all of a sudden you're creating a video on the proper donning and doffing of PPE, how to do it. It's easy to put it on, but when you go to take it off, the outside's contaminated. So we developed a quick video that any temporary worker could view on their mobile phone and feel safe getting into PPE and getting out of PPE. And so those kinds of things, or what we consider really back to basics. And then the other thing I would generally categorize as customer service, right? Everybody likes to talk about, well, we really focus big on customer service. We do too, but we get really scrutinized because of these big insurance companies we serve. And we've got the customer service scores to prove that we do it differently and do it better than a lot of other people. And so we really doubled down on customer service and really focused hard on customer service. As a matter of fact, we introduced midsummer, we introduced a whole new version of customer service measuring that we call Puro Promoter Scores. And it's really our version of Net Promoter. And we're just want to monitor the franchisees, give them better feedback more quickly so that they can do a great job, because the better job they do, the more comfortable they're making those people who have to make a decision to allow us into their structure, whether it's a home or an office. So those are some of the things that we did. And Mary's right, they were happening fast. We were just, and I didn't feel like we short-circuited the system. I just felt like we all had such an incredible sense of urgency about this that we pushed aside the unimportant and we really focused on the important and with a strong sense of urgency, and we got it done to serve our franchisees. You know, we're a servant leadership model here, and we saw ourselves as, how do we serve our franchisees the best and the highest way that we can? and it was doing some of those things, and it really paid dividends for us.
That's awesome. Thank you. Mike, I'm going to change the direction a little bit. I've got a question that I wanted to put to you and ask you to lead off with, and then Steve, I know you're going to want to come in on this one for sure. About the time many of us realized, okay, our businesses are actually doing really good, and we expect that this is going to continue. So I'll put it another way. The news that Paul just shared, that's not new to us. We all knew that our businesses are performing well and likely are going to for the next 3+ years. The simultaneous decision that came along with it is, okay, now's the time for us to expand as fast as we quickly and reasonably can, that our support systems would handle, meaning new franchisees and franchise development. Can you take the first question on how is your company and what are you seeing with respect to taking advantage of this opportunity to grow again as we're coming through the hopefully the end part of the pandemic, but our businesses are performing so well? What did your company do a year ago, essentially, to take advantage of this? What changes have you seen that have come in that likely are going to be here to stay? And Mike, I think you might have us on mute because we can't hear you.
So
there you are.
I was probably March 31st. I got it. All right. Is that, I don't know if I'm lagging behind you or not, but it was probably March 31st that I got an email from a member of the board asking what we should do, whether we should, that other franchisors were shutting down their franchise development, and asking for my input on what thought we should do. And all of us had gone through, the previous few years where unemployment was so low that the impetus to want to go out and make a change in your life and buy a franchise was probably at the lower end of our careers. And all of a sudden I saw this statistic on television that said there was 30 million people sitting at home out of work. And the thought came to me that every single one of them are trying to figure out what they want to do with their life. There's going to be a high percentage of them that want to make a change in their life. And so I immediately got on my email and sent a message. Now is not the time to take the foot off the pedal. Let's double down. And I actually got probably a 60 to 70% increase in our annual budget for driving franchise development. I had a presentation to the board. They bought into it. We started hiring, and the other piece of it is, we looked at the industry and said, how do we attract new franchisees? And we went very, very heavy into brokers. We were already with some of our brands in the brokers, bought all of our brands into all the top 10 groups, and invested heavily in sponsoring broker events. The other piece that we did, which was a little bit different than most franchisors, was we got into prospecting and looking for people that might be stuck or trying to figure out how to take advantage of the current marketplace, and really driving sales and finding people just in general fit a profile that we're looking for, proactively reaching out to them. So we ramped up, we spent, and we had a bad year, a record year for franchise development for Authority Brands. And goal this year is to sell one franchise every business day of the year. So it's been higher than it was last year, and we can. The one unique aspect of what we saw in the industry was so many franchisors were letting their entire teams go. We were getting VPs of franchise development to come work for us with tremendous amount of experience. We're able to really add strength to, of a group of a one that, is really just coming together. So we really take advantage of it.
That's great. Thank you, Mike. And Mike, we are having a lag with your internet. Just so you know, I'm not sure if there's anything you can do there locally on that or not. Steve, tell us about Frandev there on your end. And so just to reseed the questions again, you realized that your business was performing really well. You started this conversation a few moments ago. You also decided, okay, this is the time for us to step on the gas. Tell us about that decision. What did you do? And were there any significant changes that you made that likely are going to endure and keep going forward?
Yeah, I think there are a number of things. We obviously, we've always done our Meet the Team days or Discovery days live. People come in here, they love to fly to Fort Lauderdale and come and visit us. And all of a sudden, nobody's coming and nobody can come. And so we make a change immediately to video. And we've got a couple conference rooms out here that are really outfit for doing video conferences. And so we switched to doing them all video. And all of a sudden, the attendance went through the roof. We had added a lead qualifier to franchise development the year before, and he couldn't keep up with the leads. We had to add a second lead developer right away by probably mid-May. We added a second qualifier, and the developers were just going crazy with appointments. At the same time, broker deals became a higher percentage of our mix because, as I said earlier, a lot of brands just weren't open to even talk to people, and then they get the sense that, but they'd always known that we were kind of immune to the ups and downs of the economic cycles. But now we're immune to a pandemic as well. It looks pretty appealing if you're looking at franchise opportunities. And so we talked about that. We talked about how our business has been that way, and we thought it would continue to be that way. The big adjustment we had to make in how we conducted our Meet the Team days was presenting live is not the same as presenting the video, right? And so the big change that we made, which really paid dividends, was we went from a presentation format to a Q&A format, kind of like we're doing today. So we had one member of our team, we have a very bright person, our franchise development marketing manager, Elizabeth Hawkins, and Hawk became the questioner. And so rather than me making a point, she would say, hey, Steve, why don't you tell us about this or tell us about that? It made everything way more conversational. I've always said, I'd much rather have a conversation than make a presentation. And this new format change enabled us to do that. And so things got a lot more interactive between us and people who were coming in by video. They had multiple ways that they could ask questions. They didn't have to raise a hand and stop us. They could certainly do that. They could speak verbally. They could send a message to her. They could just do an electronic hand raising. And all of those things helped us get more interactive with them. And the more interactive we were, the more they were interested in our concept. So it just took off for us. It did really, really well until we get mid-year, and all of a sudden, all the financing approvals slow down.
Yeah.
So it really is true. Time kills all deals, right? And if you're a business like ours, we do a lot of these SBA Express 150 loans, and we're used to short turnaround times on approvals. And the approvals went from 30 or 40 days to 90 to 120 days.
Yeah.
And you have people, some of those prospects are people who are laid off because of COVID. Now they're looking at becoming a franchise, but they got a burn rate. They got so much capital that they can burn.
That's right.
And at a certain point, they either run out of having enough to invest in a franchise, or they panic and just take the next job offer that comes their way. And we lose them as an opportunity to put them in business, which is horrible. If we're convinced, we took a hard look at the end of the year, and everybody we won and everybody we lost. And we're convinced that if those SBA Express 150 loans would have stayed on the same approval timelines, we would have done an additional 20 meetings last year. Not hurt, or we're not the biggest brand in the world. 20 means a lot to us.
Yeah, no kidding. It would for me as well. Well, let's switch to the to the big franchisor here on the call. So, Mary, I understand you all award a franchise or two a year. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement.
Can you share with us what the FranDev side of the business was like for you all? What was that middle of the year like, or even earlier, when you realized, okay, no, we really should be accelerating our growth? And what did you all do?
Well, I appreciate what Mike was talking about when the board asked him, what should we do? We immediately knew that we wanted to double down on the development side. And there's a number of reasons. You can go back and look at white papers and studies that were done in franchising that go back 20 years ago, that when the economy suffers, you sell franchises. And so that is, and the white collar refugee, that is when they are looking to control their own destiny. There's also, I think, an interesting development happening, which is millennials are risk adverse, and so they were more geared towards jobs. And I want that. I'm being well treated by my employer. I'm in a safe place. And then they woke up one day and they were a non-essential worker. Right. And now they're wondering what is really safe. And I want to control my own destiny. And franchising is a very interesting mix between controlling my own destiny and some safety. It's got some guardrails on it. And so we're seeing the millennials now really start to have an interest in that. And, Steve touched on it. When we moved to the video, we've always been in-person Meet the Team days. And we moved in March immediately. We moved and we were really nervous about it. And, our close rate's going to drop and what's going to happen. And what happened was probably short term, there was some dropping because we had to learn how to change up the format to be more compelling in this way. And, Steve touched on it. You've got to have interaction, like something like what we're doing right now. To the person who's watching us, it's hard for them. I promise you, there's somebody sitting there on their phone and they're multitasking.
No, not this call. No, not this one.
Because no one is saying, hey, what do you think about this, Bob? And so when we started making things on every level more interactive, we got better. So we saw that go back up. And then also there were people who might have been harder for them to come to a Meet the Team day that were more willing to. They might bring their spouse now or their brother that's going to be in the business with them, and they were sold better because we're going to do a better job selling than the future franchise owner is going to do. And so we had more people on, which we think helped sell those franchises. And I both Steve and Mike have talked about it. We got more involved with the brokers, and I think brokers woke up and said, home services.
Yeah.
That is something that I can sell to because it is pandemic resistant and people are in their homes and they woke up. And so looks like all three of us have, taken advantage of that. And for that person who's looking to seek their own, control their own destiny, I do want to touch on one thing that Steve said earlier. I think you guys in Puricreen just started an NPS, and we've had we've had NPS. Probably 6 or 7 years now. It's from Fred Reichel's Ultimate Question: How likely are you to refer us to friends and family? And our NPS scores went up dramatically through this, and we really wanted to understand why. They were so appreciative of the fact that we were willing to go out, and the person who was more inclined to call a mom and pop was less inclined because they didn't know if the mom and pop was going to have the systems and the service that they needed. And so I encourage those brands that might be thinking about NPS. It was very meaningful to us because when you asked earlier, how did we know when we had it, when it was going to be okay? One of those was, NPS scores are going up, which I wouldn't have expected at first.
And I was the same. We were also amazed that our NPS scores seemed to jump up by almost 10 points in the month of May, like to numbers we had never seen before. And it didn't seem to make any sense because we were fumbling with PPP, or PPE, sorry, PPE. Yeah. All right. So we're going to go one more question, and then Paul, this is your cue that after we do this round of questions, we are going to actually open this up, and we hope that those of you that are watching will put your questions in, and please come to some of these great panelists that we've got. But my last question, Steve, I'm going to start with you, and Mike, I'll come to you next. There's a whole nother area that we face with respect to growing businesses like ours in a time like this, that it's clear that our industries are performing well, and the indicators for our industry are we're going to see this for another 3 years on the short end, and some of the models are showing 5 years. Now, with that comes an unprecedented amount of profitability for our franchisees, and I'll just call it general prosperity that they haven't seen before. Add on top of that, I know many of our franchisees have gotten EIDL and PPP loans, and they didn't necessarily need them like our friends that are over in the restaurant industries or some other industries. Our franchisees use them wisely, but they didn't need them with that same level of desperation. I look at this and say the landscape of franchisees performing well, profitability is good, and they got an influx of cash flow. Steve, the question is, how are you keeping your franchisees engaged so that you don't lose market share going forward, essentially? Because our industry is lifted, we're performing well, but are the franchisees, driven to keep grabbing market share from competitors? What are you doing there?
So we're doing a lot of things. Some of these national accounts keep us that way because if you're going to serve them, they really have high standards and they demand an awful lot of us. And so we're constantly talking about those opportunities with our franchisees. But our franchisees have a huge vision for where this business can go for them. So we have not seen our franchisees be complacent in this. We have a sister company that does large loss restoration. It doesn't fit the franchise model, but they do the scope of the project. The projects that they handle are 5 to 10 times what a PureClean would handle. And our PureClean see those guys operating in that other company all the time. And I think it helps them aspire to continue to grow. They believe that they can do that they can continue to, and so, when I first came to the company 7 years ago, a big job would be, because our average invoice amount in this industry is around $3,000 for the quick water loss. And so it would be a big deal if a franchisee got a $20,000 or $25,000 loss to take care of, right? As a result of the partnership between us and our sister company, Signal Restoration, that does the large losses, we've had franchisees learn how to do 6-figure losses, first in partnership with them and now on their own. And so it's given them a huge appetite for where this business can go. And it's a really kind of an unusual dynamic, I know, but it's worked really, really well for us. And our biggest frustration is not keeping the franchisees motivated. Our biggest frustration is, where do we get the employees to fuel this growth? And our biggest competitor is our own government. We're competing with our own government for employees because our own government's giving people checks to stay on the couch with that game controller in their hand instead of coming out into the cold, cruel world and working in a job. And that's our number one. That's the number one break on the growth of our business is on the growth of our existing businesses. We can't hire more people fast enough. I mean, and you hear a lot of people in franchising today talk about minimum wage jobs. I mean, we're starting people at $15, $18 an hour all over the country, and we still can't get them to get off the couch and come and work for us.
Yeah, well said. Mike, how about for you? What has franchisee engagement been like in your organization, and what have you done to capitalize on it, and how's it going?
Yeah, the big challenge is not being able to get together at conventions and really build those relationships. For me personally, it's been getting out. I was just down in Steve's area last week with ASP franchisee rolling around in his car to customer homes and actually seeing the business. So interacting personally with franchisees, despite the circumstances we're in, I think is still crucial. One of the things that I would say that we're trying, that maybe gives us a little bit of differentiation is our commitment to providing back office services to franchisees. In some of our brands, in the Cleaning Authority brand, we essentially provide the vast majority of marketing services to them. So we market for them. We rolled that out to our mosquito business recently. We are doing that with a new acquisition, our duty calls. The other piece is digital transformation. We rolled out an app for our cleaning customers so they can see when a customer, get a notification when a cleaning team is going to arrive 15 minutes before they arrive, and get notification when they're done, so they can, re-enter their home if, so that customer interaction, the digital transformation. We just bought a pet waste. I wanted to use the word poop, but we're rolling out PoopNet, and it's a customer interaction way for a customer to manage their relationship with us online, schedule their own, service, pay for service. So, that was a big piece for us is how can we provide back office services, but it still goes to Steve's point. We can drive a lot of business, but if they don't have the employees, that is the big number one challenge in the home service business, hands down. Yeah. I think everybody's nodding that, that's the biggest challenge. And the other piece with some of our brands, we bought the Monster Tree Service, and they had traditionally provided some HR recruiting, outsourced recruiting function for the more skilled labor, like a sales arborist or something along those lines. So, providing that back office service, trying to take as much off of a franchisee's plate to provide the expertise that we have in-house is, I think, a key. And then a digital transformation of your business and making sure you're interacting with your customers in a new, transformative way is a key piece of it.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. And Mary, you're going to wrap us up before we go to questions from the folks that are watching. So just to reframe the question, franchisee engagement during an unprecedented time for us of business growth, what are you doing with your franchisees to make sure that you're capturing every shred of market share that you all can get?
Well, some of it's very similar to what both Mike and Steve talked about, but let me wrap it up in something a little tighter just for this. We're having problems finding employees, and we're going to continue to. So you have to think about leadership and having a clear vision. And it's funny because we put a new vision out in 2019 because we had achieved our vision. You're supposed to have a vision that's like 20 years out, and we achieved it. And so when we achieved it, we had to have a new one, which is to be so remarkable, we become a beloved household name. So now there's this clear vision that everything that we do, when you talk about motivating people, having strong leadership experiences, that they're focused on how do we be so remarkable? What is our purpose? To build a service community that enriches people's lives by creating amazing experiences. And you have to talk through it at every single level. And it sounds soft, but it's not. Because every part of what you need to coach the franchise owners to lead properly. So, because it's not that there aren't enough service professionals. It's just they're working for somebody else.
That's right.
So how do you get them to come work for you? How millennials are very driven by visions and belonging to something bigger than themselves. So how do you show them? And we did something a couple of years ago where we understood and learned the persona of our different service professionals and built our some of the collateral material around that. And I will say, and I do want to give a warning, Mike touched on something about helping recruit with joint employer and everything that's happening in the government. Please, everybody, don't think, oh, I'm going to go recruit all the employees for my franchisees, because you're going to put yourself in a very dangerous position. You have to put the tools in front of them and let them use those tools. So we launched 2.5 years ago an applicant tracking system to help them with that. It doesn't fix everything, but it has helped. So I would just, tying this together is make sure you have a vision and know what that is, and that it's at every level of your organization to include that purpose, so that's how you keep the engagement. When people are engaged, they believe tomorrow can be bigger than today, and they get to be part of it.
Thank you, Mary. And Steve, I did get the name of that outstanding team member that you mentioned before. I've been looking her up on LinkedIn. If you can let her know, she'll be hearing from me. We've got a couple of openings, so thank you for that. And with that, Paul, back to you.
I just have to really thank all of you for your leadership. you know, I was listening intently, but I'm not going to lie. I was also trying to multitask, and I'm not a millennial. My wife tells me I'm horrible at multitasking. But when I heard you all say something about multitasking, I stopped. But listen, this was a lot of just interesting and helpful information. I can't thank you all enough. You know, so Tom, Mary, Mike, Steve, you know, thank you. We do have a couple questions. I know we have about 10 minutes here, so let me get to this first question from Ali. How optimistic is your assumptions that the franchise system will see an increase of 3.5% as stated? And I think that's in regards to what I had mentioned regarding the Fran data report. And you know, it's funny because I had circled this and I wanted to repeat it again. Based on Fran data, franchising is expected to experience the highest upswing of franchise sales since the last recession, especially for the commercial and residential services sector. So let me just throw that question out to all of you, and please let us know what you all think.
Well, I'll jump in with one quick stat. So there's one thing that's fueling us in the investments that we're making right now for this growth, and that is that new home starts or new home builds are a full 2 years behind right now. So it was a year and a half behind coming into the pandemic, and it only got further behind over the past year. So for those of us here on this call, you know, that are talking about residential and commercial, you know, services, our marketplace is going to get bigger on top of the work that people are doing on the existing stock. So I've got a tremendous amount of confidence in what the next couple of years are going to be. And we're investing heavily for not just today, but for 3 years from right now because of it.
I would just say, you know, nobody can compete with Mary and her team on investment and development efforts and what they're accomplishing in new franchise development. But from the press release that they put out a couple weeks ago on their success in 2020, and I'm sure what they're budgeting for, what we're budgeting for in terms of growth, total new unit growth is well above the 3.5%. And I think you heard that we're all investing heavily, betting that it will continue. And given the fact that, you know, we're still struggling in this environment where people are sitting unemployed, is still a good harbinger for a strong tailwind to push us forward to grow our franchise systems at a pace that we previously really didn't experience.
And you just have to look at history to look at, like when they said since the last recession, which I like to call the crappy recession because I'm a plumber and I can do that. I won't call it I refuse to call it the Great Recession, but that is definitely history tells us that will happen. The one thing we have to watch out for is access to capital. So what we're all going to have to pay a lot of attention to, we need to work with IFA closely to talk to our lawmakers about we need our business owners to have the best opportunity for SBA loans and other types of loans, because that is what's going to slow us down, not that there aren't enough candidates out there.
Yep. You know, Steve was speaking about it. The SBA loans, the SBA program is out there, but so many lenders left that program. They got spooked, or, you know, they walked away. And so we had just great groups out there like, you know, Guidant, Benetrans, Fran Fund, First Financial, that are out brokering deals, but finding the lenders who will take those deals. To Steve's point, so many of those lenders that are left are so backed up that it's a challenge to get the deal done in time. To what he said, it's just so important. And so providing, as a franchisor, making sure you're taking a proactive role to help your franchisees get access to capital is a key element of succeeding.
And quickly access to capital, because if you're somebody who's a white collar refugee and you're looking to replace your salary, you can't wait 9 months to get that funding.
Excellent. And the next question kind of definitely ties into what you brought up, Mary, and what you guys were discussing. But you know, Bob is wondering, if passed, how concerned are you all about the PRO Act affecting franchising, but your specific businesses?
Do everything you can to fight against it. Call every
Yeah.
senator, call every congressman. It's, you know, with the NLRB head chief being changed, it's a real danger. I mean, that's a real issue.
Significant
we need to
risk,
partner
bro.
with you at the IFA. We need
Yeah.
to partner with you guys to do what the government relations folks need us to do, to get in front and put the stories out in front, because it's the stories that will move.
And thank you. Yeah, you know, Matt Haller and team. Matt oversees our government relations. You know, this is, you know, one of the best GR teams we've had here at IFA. You know, in my tenure, and you know, we have awesome grassroots tools. Everything's on our website, franchise.org. But our Franchise Action Network, which is our, you know, basically our grassroots lobbying tool and efforts, if you will. We've got everything set up for you to send a letter off to your members of Congress, and it's all there and it's all easy. And you know, I just, you know, I was able to do it from my phone, you know, just sitting at the couch, and got letters off. And I encourage you all to do it. If anybody needs any help, you could just, you know, reach out to me directly, and I'll point you to where everything is. But yeah, it's a, you know, it's an ongoing challenge, but you know, we need your help collectively, everybody's help to basically protect the business format franchise model, so you all could continue to grow and thrive, and so we could, you know, franchising as a whole could continue to add to, you know, be this powerhouse and economic engine that adds to the U.S. economy. So, you know, can't thank you all enough. And also on the SBA side, I also know that Matt and Suzanne Beal, and specifically Suzanne Beal, there have been a lot of you know, a lot of issues during the pandemic regarding the SBA, and a lot of members have been having issues, you know, trying to get some funding, and they've been working very closely with the folks there. Obviously, like other businesses, they're even backlogged. You know, there's like one person in a basement closet somewhere, but we know who that one person in the basement closet is, and we have, you know, we have that person's direct line. But we are collecting. If you're having any problems, you know, if you don't know Suzanne or Matt, funnel those issues to me, and I'll get them over to Suzanne, because we are working very closely, both with the folks up on Capitol Hill, but also with the folks at the SBA. So, Mike, I think you had mentioned that, so thanks for bringing that up as well. So, you know, on that note, we might have an opportunity for one more question here. Let me see. This kind of ties into maybe the first question. What do you foresee derailing any of the expectations you have for 2021, and what are you doing to mitigate these thoughts? You guys may have touched on this during your presentation, but I know we could probably go into another 20 minutes on that, but you know, maybe we could take this opportunity to do like a quick little capstone, and just, you know, it would be great to hear from each of you, you know, what your thoughts are regarding 2021 and moving forward.
Ladies first.
One of our values is looking to the system for correction, proposing all possible solutions if something is not working. That's been my theme for this year. So first, stay on the system, make sure your system is correct, make sure if there's something that needs to change, that you've changed it quickly so that you can move on. And you know, what we most need to do in the world of franchising is make sure that those people who want to go into small business ownership, that they have easy access to capital. Not too easy, but easy enough that they can go do it, because that they're hungry, they're going to be ready. This is the time to do it. That is the most important thing that I think we can focus on. And then lastly, I wouldn't set small goals. I love, Mike, how you shared that story about your board asking that question. Don't have small goals, go big, because this is the time to do it.
Steve or Mike, can you add to that?
You know, I mean, I think we've nailed it already. It's access to capital for franchise development. It's access to people for franchisee growth. And, you know, that if we have those two things, I don't think there's anything holding us back. I mean, our core businesses remain extremely strong. We anticipated doing a lot of COVID cleaning last year, and we didn't. And when we went back and said why, our franchisees said we had our core business stayed so strong. We didn't have the production capacity to take on that much. We had lots of opportunities, but we didn't have people to be able to send out and do these things. They were completely committed on our core business. So, you know, last year we hit the budget that we established before we ever heard the word COVID. And this year we have a double-digit expectation for growth over that. And we see, barring those two things, you know, as long as we can keep finding people to join our business, as long as we can keep getting capital for people who want to open new units, we think that the sky's the limit.
Awesome.
I would just really, you guys have all been fantastic. But Mary said it's all about leadership as a franchisor, figuring out what the challenges franchisees have and stepping up and leading, making sure you're communicating well and just supporting them, you know, in a way that you guys have all spoken about it. You support them in a totally different way now than you did pre-COVID. And that's probably the one great thing that will come out of this is making sure that we react to franchisee problems and issues and step up and lead and guide them in a path that'll bring success to their lives.
Well said.
Awesome. Well, on that note, I can't thank you all enough for your leadership and for your time today, and for everybody who participated today. Thank you very much. You know, Mary, Tom, Steve, Mike, again, cannot thank you all enough. So we did record today's webinar. It will be made available on community.franchise.org later this evening, and we do have other webinars coming up in this series. So you know, please, if you're interested, I hope you could join us, or if you have friends in the franchise family in any of these other sectors, please let them know how important these webinars are and that they will learn a heck of a lot. And, you know, if they're going for their CFE, they'll also get CFE credit for it too. And if you do want additional information, you know, again, you know, please do listen to the initial webinar that really dove deep into the Fran data survey and results, and that'll go into a little bit more detail as well. And of course, would like to thank NetCertive for their sponsorship today. And again, for everybody who joined us today, thank you very much. And again, for all you guys, great seeing you all. Can't wait to see you in person. And enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. Stay well.
Bye.
Bye.